Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. Okay, Sandy Weiner, thank you so much for joining me. You are the Chief Love Officer of thelastfirstdate.com. You are sort of the last stop. Basically, everyone that's tried everything kind of comes to you and says, okay, maybe you can fix me, but other than that, I'm throwing in the towel. This is kind of the end. You have an extremely compelling story about how you wound up coaching in the demographic primarily of women above 40, sort of refined the love, which really means refining confidence. But I guess the first question I have for you is, when you see a person who has tried so many things in their life and has been through so much, how do you start with them, kind of building them up to think that they can start to make real changes in their life?
So part of it is that they often don't have the skills. So it's a two-part thing. So part of it is the confidence, the self-worth piece, and the other part is the skill set. And the skill set meaning how to speak up, how to set those boundaries, what to do when you're emotionally drained, how to stop being a people pleaser. A lot of therapists and other coaches will help you to diagnose the issue. They may give you a few little tools, but it's that consistency that comes from that total immersion and really going deeper. So I go deep. I just had a client today who grew up in a foreign country, and she was brought up with a lot of fears. And she had done a lot of inner work, but she never really dealt with a lot of the fears. So we were actually going through values and what are her core values? And that's one of the first steps that everyone has to go through to really identify how do you find love? You have to know yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to honor yourself. And she was going through her values, and one of her top values was freedom. And she, so what does that mean to you? Freedom to choose, freedom of speech, freedom to choose the career that I want. And so she was talking about in a previous marriage that she didn't have freedom. She had a lot of control, and in her former life, in growing up, she had a lot of control. And we got to the next one. It was also freedom led to choosing education. Education was taken away from her when she was very young. She was a girl. You don't get educated, you go to work for the family. So all these values had two ends of the spectrum. They had the beautiful value of freedom, but they were based primarily in fear. What will happen to me if I don't have freedom? I won't have a job. I won't have money. I won't have choices. The more we got into her values, the more I saw that there were two ends of the spectrum, and they were all based on the fear of staying away from what I don't want. Oh, the second one was being of service. So in her career, she's of service. But so much of this was, if I don't do good, bad things will happen. So I have to do a lot of good things, because in the next life, I'm going to be punished. And then she goes, but then I found out in this life, if I do bad things, I'll get punished. So it was just like, I kept hearing this fear. And so the homework I gave her, and this is something that people can try at home, is to really stop looking at the world through this lens of fear and start asking yourself, how would love respond to this? How could I look at this from a place of love? So as simple of a choice as, what are you eating for breakfast? I could look at this from the place of fear. If I eat this, I'm going to get fat. I'm going to be unhealthy. Or you can look at it from a place of love. I love my body. I want to honor my body. And my body's a temple, and I'm going to feed it good food. So I'm having her look at all the choices she makes during the day, see it from a place of love, and journal about it so that she can expand that. And it starts to form new neural pathways in your brain. And this is the deeper work that I do around self-love and confidence, because confidence comes from your sense of worth.
So that's a tremendous concept that I think I was actually just listening to a class about this exact idea, that especially when it comes to the major areas of someone's life, religion and their relationships, they are operating off of a fear punishment-based system. Could you perhaps speak to why so many people default to that, and if it's a mindset shift, or if it's just kind of drilling these sort of exercises to eventually kind of come to an awakening.
So we actually talked about religion in terms of what this whole concept of love and fear, because it came up for me as a Jewish woman growing up Orthodox. My parents were totally in the fear zone. And, I would ask questions of my father, who grew up in a Hasidic family, and, why do you do this, Dad? And he'd say, because God will punish me if I don't. And I didn't like that answer. And my mother really didn't have a strong education. And so her response was also pretty much, this is what you're supposed to do. There was no love there. There was no sense of love. And I think that we have to balance both. I think.
Can I just stop you to ask why growing up in a home the way that you did, why did that not necessarily fit with you? What were you looking for per se, or can you trace back sort of where you came to this, I guess, self-awareness that wasn't going to work for your own religious experience?
I have no idea. I have no idea why I was drawn to love, but I think I've always been drawn to love, and probably why I ended up in the business of love. I don't think we're motivated by fear. And this has been scientifically proven over and over again. And somebody one of my Facebook friends today posted something about spanking your child, and how, if your child is old enough to reason with them, you should reason with them. Or if it's not old enough to reason them, and basically it just, and he was writing, well, I probably was the asshole. And I said, no, parents should not be beating fear into your child. That is not how we learn. If he's still walking around in his 40s or 50s thinking, I was a bad person, I deserve to be hit, that's a bad thing. So people are not motivated by fear; they're motivated by love.
Like the scientific study that you're talking about, what do you recall what they were saying or what the outcome was? And is that like a modern thing, or is that something that's kind of in all of humanity was like this, but it's just easier controlled by fear?
I think it's more modern that we're seeing the results of love versus fear, that we motivate somebody by reward rather than punishment. I know even in parenting, I looked for books that would help me be the kind of parent that I wished I had had, and the kind of parent that I wanted to be. And the kind of parent I wanted to be was somebody who tapped into my child's needs, not just mine, and didn't respond out of fear that, I have to be the powerful one and I have to control you. No good comes from that. My kids were being, more and more misbehaving. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And so, it was life-changing to get these books. And actually I quoted one of the books. She was talking about how when you do things for your kids and they don't appreciate it, the old school way would be, I'm doing this for you and you don't appreciate anything I do. And I'm working, and it just feels like, ew. Like I remember feeling like that growing up. So I think it's Ativan. Anyway, she talked about how like you're washing the dishes and you say to your kids, I'm washing the dishes because I love you so much. I am doing your laundry because I love you so much. There's a big shift in how we feel when somebody says, I'm doing this because I love you, not I'm sticking it to you and, you better appreciate me.
We do things for people out of the expectation that they're like, oh, they did this for me, so therefore they must know that I love them, and therefore they want to do X, Y, and Z. So it's not really like giving at all. It's a very manipulative form of taking. But I think to recondition the mind and say, I'm doing this, I'm supporting my family because I love my family, I'm doing the dishes because I love my wife or I love my kids, that's going to completely change, I guess, the person.
It's putting a different perspective on it. Like you said before, a mindset shift. I think if we look at things from that lens of love, we're going to draw in more love, and we're going to be more loving in the process. About my TEDx talk about how I used to live my life as a Tootsie Pop. And so just for people who haven't watched it, it's really about how I built layers and layers like a Tootsie Roll Pop around my heart to guard me from pain every time I got hurt. And many of us go around life like that. Every time something bad happens, we put up another guard, we get a little snippy, we get a little angry, we push people away when in reality, we're all looking for connection, we're all looking for love. And it's one of our core common needs. And if we could just strengthen internally, which is really the flip side of the Tootsie Pop is the Heath bar, which is strong in the middle and soft on the outside. The point is to be sweet, to be soft, but be strong. Come from a place of strength and standards and boundaries, which is something else we were going to talk about. But they come from a place of love. They're not harsh. They're sweet and they're soft, but they're like, I'm sorry, this just doesn't work for me.
So you said you help people not be people pleasers. How do you even start? How do you even start to think that that's bad? Because we have this, I don't know, could be, I have a very, I'm going to stop saying we, I'll just say I have this tremendous need to feel like people like me and that I'm sort of that nice person that kind of gets along with everybody. So why is that problematic? And then how do you go about reconditioning yourself so that you are more real and less people pleaser?
Why is it bad to be a people pleaser? Because it's not about you, it's about them. It's about listening to external forces and giving up usually bits of yourself in the process. So if you're constantly saying yes to volunteering, to helping others, and you're not listening to what your core self needs and wants, then you're depleted. And it's no fun to be around depleted people. I used to be one of them, and it was no fun to be with me. So I had given up tons of the most important pieces of myself, and I felt really lost after my divorce. And I realized that I was trying so hard to keep the peace in a marriage that wasn't working, that I was bending over backwards, trying to do things that just didn't work. And I was like an empty shell after a while. And so that's why it's not good to be a people pleaser. It's important to be kind to other people, but not when it's at the risk of being unkind to yourself.
How did you rebuild yourself after that?
So I got clarity around my values first. What is important to me? And one way to do that is we have a coaching exercise called peak moments, a peak moment in your life. So if you think, maybe you'll do this with me, if you don't mind.
I'd love to.
Okay, good. So a lot of people don't really get that idea of what is a peak moment. And so another way to say it is a time in your life when you were really happy, like super happy. You were doing something that you loved. Tell me what that was like, if you can come up with something.
Sure. So I was previously working at UCLA, and I just have this, we'd have tons of students over, and I would have this, I still see it clear, like our table would be like set all the way down, no room, multiple tables. And this, I would just, either it was right before, and I would have all this anticipation about, everybody coming, or when I'd be able to give a speech and actually be able to get that feedback that I was really changing somebody's life. Like I would live off of that. Is that good?
Yeah, it's great. So we're going to now mine for the values in that experience. So what I'm hearing is your need for connection, your need to make an impact on others. What else was going on for you at the time that felt like a core value of yours?
Important. I felt my own set value was being, I guess I was being validated that I was doing what I was supposed to. For all of my life, I've always wanted to have this really big impact on the world. And so I felt like to a certain extent, I was manifesting that, and it was like really happening. Does that work?
Yeah.
Great.
So
you see that people pleaser thing, because I keep asking you that question, right?
Yeah, right. Checking in. It's to me, what I'm hearing is that you felt, I'm thinking of the term well used, that you know your worth and you feel aligned and you're sharing what you're here to do. And you're making a big impact on people, and that makes you come alive. I could see it in your face just now. So when you're in that space of honoring your values, okay, so let's say somebody came to you and you were about to work on a speech and then you had this specific amount of time, only 2 hours that day, and the speech was later that night, and somebody came and asked you a favor, and you were about to do something really important. And now you're people pleasing and you're saying, oh, sure, I'll just go run that errand for you. And I'll go visit the sick and but now you've given up something really important. Like, how would that feel?
I mean, ultimately, I think it would feel pretty, It would feel, I'm thinking terrible. It would be upsetting because I feel like I would be angry at the person that I was doing it for and angry at myself for saying yes. And then ultimately will be angry because the outcome will be that I didn't deliver in the way that I felt that I was most capable to do.
Right. So you don't want to get to that place of anger at somebody else or yourself. And so taking a moment before you have that auto yes, sure, I'll do it. I'll do anything you ask. So many of us just automatically say yes to everything. And so you need to put some space. So that's one of the first steps of not being a people pleaser, besides really getting into your core values. So we did some of that work, and you can continue to find those happy moments and think about that.
Just to clarify, so asking yourself after you think about like, what am I really interested in wanting to do? Asking yourself, is this taking away from my ability to do that? And if the answer is yes, then say, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Could you go on crazy auto with this where you end up like quitting your job and kind of wandering out into the danger space of like not really knowing what you're doing because you're sort of following this internal muse, or is that taking it too far?
Well, if one of your core values is responsibility, then no. um, but I would say do some clarification work, because you don't want to be working in a career where you feel totally drained all the time. And there are people I know who are working in these jobs where they're so drained, and people are coming at them with, request after request after request. So I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she told me how she set a boundary at work. She's the only female on the executive board of this company, and it's a family-run company. I mean, there's so many reasons why she's sort of the lowest person on the totem pole. So they throw a lot of work at her, but they want her to accomplish certain things, and she can't do it if she gets all the scut work on top of the amount of work she has. So instead of saying, stop throwing this work at me, I'm not doing it, she said, what's your priority? And, if you want me to get that work done, then you got to let me know that that's the priority, because I can't do all the other jobs. So it's setting a clear boundary by being kind, but also saying, you need to let me know what your priority is here.
Do you feel that your boundaries are, because I love that idea of like, what is a boundary? How do you find, I know that we're discussing people pleasing, but I think it kind of parlays, I don't know what that word means, but parlays nicely to boundaries. And so what does it mean to find boundaries, and how do you define those, and how do you, I guess, enforce those?
So boundaries are really about keeping you safe and sane. It's keeping you aligned. It's keeping you safe for your own needs, but also you're not going to go crazy. You're not going to be, yes, 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 yes to everybody and not to you. So, to set a boundary, you gotta let somebody know when they've crossed a boundary. So there's many ways people can cross a boundary. They can do it by being insensitive to a request that you've made. So I have a thing about when people talk on the phone when they're with me, or answer texts when they're with me. And I've asked a friend, would you be willing to put your phone away when we're together? Because I really value the time that we're together, and it feels very disconnecting to me when you keep responding to your family when we're together. And she has poor boundaries. It's not me, it's her. When you're with boundary crossers, because they can't keep boundaries for themselves, you're smiling, something's going on in your head.
No, it's I so many things. It's so funny because it's just like that the confidence to be able to articulate that is something that for me, I'm just like, I don't think I can even say that to somebody.
It's a practice. I wasn't good at this. I mean, I had my boundaries crossed so many times, and one of my strongest values is, that feeling of freedom of expression, of being heard, being seen. It's really important to me. And when I couldn't achieve that, when I was made fun for speaking up for the things that I stood for, I would just stop trying with that person. And I didn't yet have the skills that I now teach. And one of the reasons I teach them is because so many of us are lacking. We are not modeled this growing up. What do you do if you're in the same room with somebody? I mean, my daughter will call me sometimes and she'll start talking to somebody else on that she's passing by. She doesn't even say there's somebody else in the space. And I say to her, listen, if you're going to have another conversation, please let me know. Hang up the phone. I don't want to be hanging on the other end of that phone. It feels disrespectful to me. So it's, you've got to be able to figure out what is going on for you. Are you feeling disrespected? Are you feeling disconnected? Know what you're feeling inside. So that's, the whole feelings and needs inventory. Like really get familiar with your feelings, what's going on in your body, and be able to speak to that. If somebody says something and you get really uncomfortable, you could just say, I'm feeling uncomfortable. You don't even have to know what it is yet,
So you started after your divorce, sort of trying to rebuild yourself. Was that through coaching, through learning? How did you know? I mean, because and I'm sure this is one of the reasons why you've built the practice that you have, is that probably so many people think, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me go try to find it. And let me just try it again. Maybe it'll be different the second time. And then they find out the second and the third time that what's really broken is them per se. And that's why they keep drawing these kinds of things to them. How did you figure out, so I need to do something for myself, as opposed to just trying to, kind of put myself in a different situation and hope it'll be different next time?
Well, coaching school helped. Coaching school was probably the first step in having clarity about my core values, my core needs, learning to get really curious, ask a lot of questions, but taking really extreme personal responsibility for my process. I knew the things that didn't work, that was a no-brainer. I had dealt with that my whole life. And so, when I was married to the wrong person, and I kept trying to have conversations in a different way, with a different twist, in a way that he could hear them. And, when you're talking to the wrong person, it's not going to work. So you have to choose the right people to have these conversations with too. You can't, sometimes it's better to walk away. Sometimes it's better to just say, this isn't working. I have to walk away. And I've had friends, I have to say that part of the divorce process was going through the list of people in my life, and people who I didn't want to be with anymore because they were not adding to my life. It was not an even kind of relationship. The balance was completely off, and I just had to start speaking up. And sometimes I didn't do it in the right way. It doesn't matter. You have to practice, and you have to do it. You have to start somewhere. I had a coaching partner who we used to practice coaching together. And every time she would get on the phone, she would cry. Poor me, my relationships aren't working. Oh my God. And I couldn't stand hearing it. And I didn't even know why, but that victim thing is something I have a really hard time being with. I didn't even know how to coach her. Because you can't coach the victim. The victim is saboteur. It's really like you're coaching this uncoachable person. And I finally said to her, listen, I care about you. I just can't do this anymore. It's draining me. It's just not working. And she was lovely. She was lovely about it.
So how does a person start to figure out, and I don't know if this was was it like, were these like a big shift? You're like, oh, I can suddenly do this before? Or how does a person start to ascertain whether or not the relationship in their lives are serving them? How do they figure that out? What's the bar for, there's the inevitable ups and downs of a relationship, and then eventually saying like, actually it's not working for me.
So I used to wait way too long. Waited till the scale was like, I was up here and they were down here, and I was like, wait, what happened? I gave them too much. I'm depleted now, and I don't know what happened. So what I feel is we often ignore the red flags at the beginning. I had a friend whose red flags I ignored. I saw them, but I was like, well, I want to please her. I want to be nice to her. She's new to the community. I want to be kind. And I kept doing kind things, and it was not reciprocated. And finally, the last straw came when I really needed something from her. And she made it all about herself. And it just kind of blew up. And it was just like, not working for me. Now I can figure it out sooner. So, I think when you first start this process, you need to really assess, is this a one-sided relationship? Am I giving more than I'm getting? But also, am I asking? Am I receiving? And a lot of us don't know how to ask for help. and a lot of us don't know how to receive help. So all of
When
those
you, when
things
you,
are
I'm sorry to
important.
interrupt you. When you say you don't know how to ask for help, what does that mean? Because we aren't emotionally open enough to admit that we could need help, and that doesn't mean we're a terrible person, or you literally just don't know how to say, help me? Like, tell me a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think emotionally, we feel that it's a weakness to ask for help. We feel that we should just be giving. I mean, that's how we were mostly, I think most of us were trained. We all have to give. Receiving, asking for help means that you can't do it yourself, and you should be able to do everything yourself, and that's a big fallacy. So and I think somebody pointed out to me one day that when you don't give somebody the opportunity to help you, it's actually a disservice. When you think about all the kindness that you can give to other people, and how good it makes you feel when it's aligned, when it's a choice that you're making, from a good place with love, not fear, not just to please. It feels great. But if you don't give somebody the opportunity to do it back, you're taking away. It's actually a disservice.
But two things. First of all, I want to point out and I'm asking if this is how you do it. You keep going back to saying I'm feeling, as if the barometer for your ability to figure out if something is good or bad is some kind of a physiological experience. Is that true? Are you like actually like trying to figure out with your body, like, do I feel okay or not? Or is that just sort of a colloquial term? What I'm
Yeah,
saying?
no, I'm glad you asked that. And it's something that I was probably disconnected from most of my life, because most of us live in our heads. And part of this whole process of finding love again is about balancing the head and the heart and really getting connected to your body. And your body, your intuition it lies within your body. Your body doesn't lie. So if you're feeling something in your chest and your gut, pay attention to what that is. And sometimes it's a trigger. Sometimes it's a fear-based reaction. And sometimes, and most of the time, it is really based on something that's going on for you. You've got to go deeper into what is that? What am I feeling right now? And whatever you're feeling is because you have a need that's not being met or is being met. So in that place of ultimate joy that you felt when you were connected to your audience, you had needs that were being met, and that's why you felt that joy. When your needs are not met, you feel other things. So when you're feeling angry at someone, it's because you might have a need for connection that's not being met.
If I get such a high off of this kind of, high impact type of work, so to speak, is there a way to sort of go back and reprogram that so that I can be, quote, more not that? Or is that kind of killing who you are, and you're really trying to kind of go back? And I guess that's the question with your clients, people that have lived so many years where they are, have worked and have been in service of others for so long. Are you actively trying to get them to kind of shed that and kind of go back to their essence? Or are you going to try to connect them and sort of reprogram them so they're sort of just doing what works for them in their life now?
Okay. I believe that our core values are present from the time we're very young. These values are there, and then what happens is we start listening to external sources. So we have our core essence in the center. Yeah, so that's us in the center of that little bubble. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens around us, and there's people telling us how we should feel and how we should think and who we should be with. And you're wearing the wrong clothes, you're hanging out with the wrong friends, you're dating the wrong people. Oh no, that's not good for you. That's not. And so we forget how to tap into our core wisdom, which is there. And so I feel like the process is the unlearning. It's that taking off those veils. Stop covering up everything that you've covered and start seeing things for what they really are. Stop interpreting, stop looking to others to give you answers, because we all have the wisdom here.
Newfound, but I'm saying post-divorce, when you sort of became more comfortable embracing who you really are as an essential person, how did that change your relationship with spirituality?
I remember learning that the divine lives within us all. That was a really profound thing for me, that whatever we believe our creator is, and it's changing for me all the time, just to be honest here, that whatever that is, to know that we have inherent greatness and beauty within, because we are part of something bigger. And so I personally believe that. I believe that we actually live on such a small part of our potential. And that was part of my coming out after my divorce, was like, tap into what that potential is. Like, you knowing I am here to serve and to be well used, to take all this wisdom that I have and to speak to others and to connect them and to inspire them. And I was a person who played small. I hid, I pleased others. And in doing that, you're diminishing yourself, you're diminishing your light. So I love the idea of, in Hebrew, the word neshama. I actually shared this with my Buddhist client this morning, that the word neshama means soul, and the word for neshima means breath, and they both come from the same word. And so there's something about that, this divine soul, or however you see the spirit that lies within us, that with each breath we have that. It's within all of us, and that we often are afraid of it. We're afraid of our magnificence. And so we downplay it. And I do believe that we're part of something bigger, and that if more of us could tap into that, we'd have an amazing world.
Sitting with someone on a train, I don't know why you're on a train, but whatever it might be, an Uber, and the conversation is going to end. You're never going to see them again. What would you like? What's that one piece, if you were going to break them out of that playing smaller, that and just to embrace themselves as they are and just go after what they want, what would you tell them? What mechanism do they need in order to do that?
Well, first I'd have to know that they want to do that. And doing that peak moment exercise that I did with you earlier is a great way to tap into that. I actually did that on the train on the way home from one of my coaching.
So you're riding a train, okay?
I was riding a train and coming home from coaching school. This was back when I was taking the foundational courses. And we had homework Saturday night, and I wouldn't have had time any other time. So I'm like talking to a random stranger on the train, and I'm going, tell me about a peak moment in your life when you really felt that you were happy and living your values. And they come alive. It's that aliveness where somebody just starts tapping into creativity and the things that make me excited. And so then when you get people tapped into that, then you can talk to them about what's one small step you can take towards making that come even more alive in your life. And so it's a lot of small steps. It's not this giant leap that we have to take, but I think if we remember that taking these small steps can create huge change, and to know that we all have the opportunity to make a difference in other people's lives. And to me, there's nothing more valuable than that.
When you're working with people who have tried so much, and helping women find their what they're looking for after 40, I'm sure there must be so much fear that accompanies having tried and tried and tried and failed, because I don't think it's a lack of trying that people necessarily don't get to where they want, but it just kind of builds up that fear. How would you empower someone to sort of break through the fear to actually start to go after what they're looking for?
Well, first, I think when they hear about the success of others, it helps. When they hear that the 56-year-old woman who never got married and all she wanted in her life was to get married is getting married. And it was the people pleaser cure that helped her. So much of what we do is based on skills that we have at the time. It's the knowledge and the skills that we have at the time. So with the knowledge that you just don't have all the skills you need yet, but you do have everything else that you need. So we're going to help you uncover the things that you've covered. And I'm going to help you have the skills so that you can speak up and show up and shine in a way that you never have. And so when you've never done things in this way, then you've never experienced what you're going to experience. And it takes a leap of faith, but also the knowledge that with the right skill set, you're going to achieve something very different than you did in the past.
Awesome. Okay, Sandy Weiner, how do people follow you, find you, work with you, etc.?
Lastfirstdate.com is my website. I have a YouTube channel. You can find all of that if you go on the website. Also, my Facebook group is growing every day. We have almost 2,000 members. It's a place where you can hear me go live and see all of my podcasts. The Facebook group is called Your Last First Date. And I have a podcast called Last First Date Radio. You can find that on iTunes or Blog Talk Radio. I do a podcast every Tuesday.
Sandy Weiner, thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. It's very inspiring and I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.